Hi, everyone. We're going to take a look at chapter 5, which is about business communication. So, one of the things that you can leverage to your advantage is your communication skills. And basically, what you're trying to do is convey a message, and that message needs to be heard and listened to and received by your listener. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in this chapter is different ways we can do this. So, noise. Noise is just simply what is going around you that prohibits your message from going through. And this interference could be a cell phone. It could be people talking. It could be people walking by in a hallway. This noise is something that's going to distract. So there's barriers to communication, and you can see all 6 of these on the screen. I'm not going to read each one of the 6, but there's a couple I want to talk about. The language communication, of course, trying to communicate with each other, trying to understand what the other's saying. Now, this isn't just language like English to Spanish or Spanish to German, anything like that. This could be different types of nomenclature used within an industry, within a business. I've experienced that where I came into a new facility and at my old place, we called it one thing, but the new place called it another, and I had no idea. And the person I was talking to had no idea what I was talking about. And so we went round and round for a little bit until we finally figured out, hey, you know what? We're talking about the same thing, but just something a little different. Um, Perceptual, how that message is perceived, how that message, is there any biases with that perception? And you'll run into that a lot because people have their biases, they have their predetermined judgments, and that's how they perceive your messages. All right, so nonverbal communication. A couple things that really work on here. Eye contact. When I see people speak, one of the things that they don't do is have eye contact with the audience. And it's this eye contact that makes connections to help your message be received even greater. Now, eye contact can be as just looking at people, you don't have to like stare at it by any stretch of imagination. But what you want to do is make sure that these individuals are engaged in what you're saying, and you're not going to know if you're engaged without looking at them. The types of voice. If I talk in a really small and I have my head down, you're going to lose interest. You're not going to be anywhere interested in what I'm having to say. So this idea of the tone of voice, convey from the stomach, have it come out and speak loudly, and have it where people will know, hey, this person wants to be here and this person wants us to hear what he has to say. Facial expressions. Don't underestimate this. And, if something goes wrong, that's okay. You know what? I've seen many times and I've experienced many times where presentations have gone wrong. You deal with it. You don't let, yeah, you're mad, but don't let it show too much. And, show that you want to be there and it's okay. We're going to get through this. Gesture and posture. If I was standing up right now, I would slump over and I'd be like, oh, again, I don't want to be here, blah, 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 blah. No, no, stand straight, talk with a loud voice, have eye contact. That is the ways of successful communication. No matter if it's business, if it's another class, talking to a church group, whatever the case may be, that is one of the things I want to stress to you is these 4 things right here. All right, active listening. So active listening is that the process of the listener maybe leaning in and engaged, having that eye contact, nodding when spoken to, so that attention's at the person. It's not looking at your phone. It's not looking elsewhere. It's looking at that person, understand what they have to say. All right, the do's and don'ts for better listening. Again, I'm not going to go over this whole entire list. It's in your book and also in front of you too. A couple of things here. This nonverbal, what we just talked about, smile, nod, yes. Um, Also another thing too, this last point about verbal feedback. Um, come regurgitate a little bit what they're saying and repeat what they're saying, but in your words. So if you can do that, if you can paraphrase what a person's telling you in your own words, that means their message got received to you. And then you can better understand what the person's trying to convey to you, if there's a question that they have. So that helps a lot. I do that a lot with my students. Listening don'ts. We talked about this in the last slide. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at anything else. Just look at that person in front of you. Um, don't interrupt. I admit I have a bad habit of doing this sometimes. You get so excited in a conversation, you want to chime in, but don't let the person finish and then say your thought. Then you go back to the verbal feedback on the listening do's. Hear what they have to say it in your own terms, and hopefully that works out for you. All right, so different types of communication channels. Um, there's different things we can talk about here. It could be what we're doing right now. You're listening to this presentation. It'd be me in a classroom talking to you. It could be a Zoom meeting. There's different channels of communication, but it's also going to be written as well. So there's different forms. And as we have expanded more into technology, especially after COVID, presentations and messages like this are become much, much more common. All right, so in types of communication, we just talked about this: video conferencing, texting, voicemail is still around. People leave voicemails. Face-to-face meetings, don't discount a face-to-face meeting. Yeah, you're probably saying to yourself, well, Zoom's kind of face-to-face. Well, yeah, but there's nothing like having a person in a room sitting across from you and build that connection with them. Dramatic rise of video conferencing many, many years ago when I worked at a place in Quad. I worked for U.S. News inside a Quad Graphics facility in Hartford, Wisconsin. And at that one point, Quad had a video conferencing room. It was a big deal to video conference, and you had to had special permission. Only a few people were allowed in there. And now, of course, it's changed dramatically with Zoom. The first was Skype and Zoom, and we can do it with FaceTime with the Mac or the Apple too. So things have changed dramatically, and this got really pushed when COVID hit. And there's some things about this video conferencing you have to keep in mind. First of all, keep the camera on. I know the temptation is somebody speaking on camera, you want to shut it off and do other things. I get it. Keep engaged, keep involved. That way you'll get the message. Professional attire. Don't wear like a tank top and a hat or anything like that. Dress as if you're ready for the presentation like you would at a normal work environment. All right, the audience. You want to communicate your message. Know who your audience is. I have to admit, there's been times where I've done a presentation. I thought I knew what my audience wanted, and they didn't. And it did not go well at all, as you can imagine. And so, think about what your audience wants. The person that asks you to speak, if it's an instructor or someone else that's you're asking to speak to a group, find out what it is, what message they want to convey, because you don't want to give the wrong message across. Trust me, it's not good. All right. So analyze the audience. How how you speak to a group of second graders is much, much different than you would speak to doctoral students. Obviously um, that's kind of an extreme example, but you get the idea. So if you're talking technology to a bunch of people in the technology industry, you would talk differently to them than you would to individuals who have no clue about technology. You wouldn't use the acronyms. You wouldn't use some of the tech terms. You would speak to the level at which people understand. And that's not to say those people who don't understand are dumb, not, but they just don't have the experience and expertise in that field. Oh, and slang. Yes. Avoid the slang. I know it's kind of easy and it's part of our lexicon in English language, but try to avoid it at all costs. Bias. We talked about this a little bit earlier, how people have biases, and these biases are going to come from where we grew up, our education, our experiences, um, even for male or female. So these biases happen. Um, in regards to, you see this point here about age biases. Um, you see this idea about youth being valued qualities such as creativity, speed, independence, and individualism. Older individuals can have that too. And just because a person gets older doesn't mean that they become less valuable. And, you know, okay, that's my bias that we just talked about there. And, just know that, yeah, a younger person may become more vibrant, maybe more vibrant, but a person of advanced age, they have a lot to offer too. So don't forget that, and don't forget that as you speak to individuals. Well, I hope you guys are doing good so far. We're 10 minutes into this. I hope you're still with me, and I hope you're enjoying this. Um, in regards to active voice, you know, we're looking at action verbs. You can see here. I'm not gonna get too much into this, but yeah, you want to use active voice as much as possible. In regards to passive voice, um, if you say that I'm sorry, the document shown here is not as bright, not as focused, not as well done as it could be. Okay. And that's a little bit negative overtone. But then we put an active voice, you can say, we are still working on this document. What we have right now is really good. We're continuing to improve this document. It's always continuous improvement process. Much different in turn active to passive. Message responses. You can see here about the computer password procedures. And I'm not going to get too much in the slide. You can read this. But, you're going to, all three people on the responses here, you will see these people at work. You will, I promise it. There's going to be some people like hip hip hooray. There's going to be some people like and there's going to be these other people who are be like, oh, again, we have to do this again. And even though it's a 2-second fix for them, it's just an inconvenience, and they're going to let you know about it. And so you'll get these people, and it's part of the organizational behavior that you got to learn, you got to talk about. But you will see people with the different types of responses here. All right, so setting the right tone. Common words. Use a word that people use that use in the facility. That could be slang. I know it said not to use slang, but it could be slang that is in the facility that talks about the work and the employment. It could be something that that's common to the industry, not just to the facility and the organization, but to the industry itself. Avoid contractions. Avoid contractions in your speaking. Avoid contractions in your writing. Um, they don't sound good. They don't read good. Just spell out everything. Instead of I have. Instead of I am. Okay, so that'll go a long way in business speaking. All right. So black paragraphs, you know, I have a preference with this. I just do ragged right. So that means justified left. What they're talking about here is justified where all the words are same. And what is odd about that is sometimes the spacing gets kind of wonky. So you got to be careful with that. So in regards to delivering a speech, and this is one of the things I think is the most important part because you will be judged more by the spoken word than the written word. And how you present yourself will determine how a person perceives you. And so I'm gonna go by what's on the slides here, but I want to add a little bit of my experience here as well. So the opening, you give a speech and you want to give a fact, you want to ask a question, you want to tell a joke, whatever the case may be. Get the opening going, get the audience engaged. You can give them a stat, tell them why this is so important to them, and then the body of the presentation should not include more than 2 to 4 points. Depends how long the presentation is. All right, if you have a presentation that's 40 minutes, you're going to need more than 4 points. If you have a presentation that's 5 minutes, you probably have two. So this is kind of relative to how long the presentation is going to be. No matter how long the presentation is, the structure should be clear. The people listening to the presentation should have a pretty good idea of where you're going. All right, so the closure of the presentation, go back and review. So this was the important thing. These here are my takeaways. Give them something that when they listen to your presentation and they walk out the door after it, they have something to take with them. And this idea about the audience, in conclusion, wrapping things up, as I close, these things are let the audience know, okay, we're wrapping up. It's time to put our thoughts together. Question and answer session, save time for questions. Some people will have questions after the presentation. Be prepared for that. There are going to be some people who are going to ask you a fastball, and there's some people who are going to give you a softball. So be prepared for each one. In my experiences, I've seen more softballs than fastballs, but I've had the occasional fastball thrown at me. So just be aware. Oops. There we go. Visual aids. Visual aids work out well, and there should be at least a picture, a graph, a drawing, something on every slide. It should just not be a whole bunch of words and on a slide. And also try not to make it just try not to make it to the point where you got a couple words on a slide and that's it, or you got paragraphs on a slide. Don't do that either. All right, you want to have a visually appealing slide. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, Rich, yours aren't very visually appealing right now. 100% agree with that. I've taken account the ADA, and so I have to take that into account and make sure my slides are able to be read by anyone. So that's why you kind of see it generic. Um, so in terms of visual aids, don't just read from the slides. All right. One of the worst things you can do is turn around and read the screen. You lose eye contact, you lose credibility, you lose your audience, and you lose respect. So don't just read from the slides. Actually prepare. Prepare for the presentation. Remember how I told you you're more judged by spoken word than written word. That's one of those things. If you read it, you're not prepared, people are going to have a very negative opinion on you. And so, when you go to give a presentation, let's say you're giving a 5-minute presentation, practice at home, practice in front of the mirror, talk to your dog, talk to anyone who'll listen to you. For a 5-minute presentation given in a class or in some sort of presentation in the wild, you want to be 6 minutes at home because you're going to be more relaxed. You're going to have your notes in front of you. You'll cover everything. But when you talk in front of people, you're going to talk faster. You're going to forget things. So you want to give yourself at least 1 extra minute for every 5 minutes of your speech. All right. Nerves. We all get them. And I wish there was a magic formula to tell you how to take care of nerves. There's not. Experience is the best way, practice is the other. Um, I know sometimes people will find a friend in the audience or in the class and they stare and talk to that person because it's like a safe island. But actually, it's one of the worst things you can do because you shut out the rest of the audience. So while it's good to have that one safety net in there, make sure that you look at the other audience. If you practice more, the more confident you're going to be. Incorporating humor, be careful with this. Humor does belong in presentations. Just be careful about what kind of joke you might say. Be careful about, if you try to do an extemporaneous presentation and you slip, those are things you got to be careful of. Now, I've done that before. I've spoken at extemporaneous presentation, and I tried to tell a joke, and it just bombed, and almost got myself in trouble. So just be careful with that. The dynamic delivery, you know, talk to people, use hand gestures. Um, if you have handouts, give the audience, give them handouts. There's times where I've had presentations where, as I was talking, I would give them something so they have like a touchy feely. Those are things you want to consider when you're doing a presentation. All right. So the last slide, as I told you, wrap things up, let them know this is the last slide. And so some tips for the dynamic delivery. Look directly at the members of the audience. At least 50% of the time, I would make it even 60%. Your voice, your facial expressions, absolutely use it. Use it to your advantage. Slow down and listen to yourself. You're going to get nervous up there. Now, let me give you something really quick so that if you were to give your presentation and you kind of goof up or you lose your spot, Here's one thing you can do. It's a natural thing. You take a drink. It's a natural, it's a natural thing to do. It gives you about 10 seconds to collect yourself. Those 10 seconds can make or break a presentation. So always have something to drink with you as you're speaking, and if you need it, take a sip. Okay. So that is my talk about chapter 5. I hope that you liked it and you learned something from it. If you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. I'm here to help, and I will see you in chapter 6. Take care and have a great day.